Morning, everyone. Just a second there. I'm going over my notes one more time. I want to get them right. I guess it's good afternoon, by the way. It's not good morning, good afternoon. Lee's back at you here today. And I've read Saturday's Wall Street Journal. Saturday's Wall Street Journal is a lot to wade through. It's 4 different sections. And they have an arts section and a technology section. So there's a lot to get through. And I've got a few interesting articles I picked out, and I hope you enjoy it today. So first of all, the Silicon Valley exodus. So there's some signs that an exodus from the Silicon Valley is finally happening. And people predicted it for a while with the COVID pandemic. So to give you a little backstory that's in the article I thought was interesting. A young couple's lived in San Francisco for 5 years. They've decided to move to Phoenix. The first thing is that the landlord offered to reduce their lease by $250 a month. $250 a month. Think about that. If they would stay through the end of the lease. So that's a sign that landlord knows that they're going to have a tough time filling that unit. And then the guy went for his last dental checkup before he moved and told the dentist he was moving. And the dentist says he's hearing a lot of that when patients come in recently. So anecdotal data. I mean, it is what it is. It's interesting, but you always want to look at the facts. So what are the facts? 96, the property listings, the first week of August in San Francisco Bay Area up 96% property listings. In the past, that was you didn't even have to list them. And then there's 11% decline in the median rent in the Bay Area, 11% decline. So listings are growing, number of units available, and declining rent. That's usually a pretty good sign that people are moving out and making other options. And then the last thing, in a survey of Bay Area workers, this kind of builds on, like, if you are living in California right now in the Bay Area and you're a worker, what's your preference for leaving? 42% said they would move if the employer let them work remote. So they would move out of that area. So they're only there for their employer right now. That's an interesting perspective. So if that employee, like a lot of them are doing right now, moves to remote work, they may be gone. Interesting data points here. Facebook is recruiting a director of remote workforce. So they see this as a shift in the way that they're going to work, and they want a high-level manager to be responsible for this large shift, and they see it being very large and needing focused management on it. So as I put in my notes, this shift is on. It's happening. How big it's going to be, some people are saying 75% of the workforce will turn out to be remote workers. I think that's my idea would be that maybe 40% will be remote, 40 to 50%, and the other 50 will still work. So the question would be for you, if you could work anywhere, are you thinking about this? Where would you go? Where would you go? Phoenix, Utah, Texas? Where would you go? And then another question would be, if you're working on your career, I know a lot of younger people working on their career and deciding what career they'd like to be. Are they working as much and where they'd like to be? Because maybe in the future, we used to always, my father always said, you go where the work is. Well, I think that may be an outdated statement now, and you can go where the work is, but you don't have to move. You don't have to actually go. And so are you planning for it? Are you working on it? Second article, why Fortnite got booted. So Epic Games, the maker of Fortnite, is one of the most popular games in the world. Certainly right up there at the top. This week, both Apple and Android has kicked Fortnite out of their app stores for skirting the in-game payment system. So, by the way, the fees are 30%. So every time you pay $1 to Fortnite or any app out there, anytime you give them $1, Apple and Android both, by the way, they're both got identical fee structures, are taking 30% off the top, almost universally. I mean, there's almost no way around this. And so, so interesting history. When Apple was first working on this, they were trying to figure out what to charge. And what they looked at as a source back then was the cable TV. Cable TV was charging a 35% fee for distributing pay-per-view movies. So Apple looked at that and said, well, that's a good distribution model. We'll do it at 30%. So, and it's huge money. Apple App Store made $39 billion this year so far on apps. $39 billion. Android has made $21 billion. So $60 billion business in the two prominent platforms out there. This is a huge, huge business. I think it's 15-20% of Apple's service business right off the top of my head. You'd have to remind me, but it's a huge part of their revenue. So, so Apple's kind of compared this to the brick and mortar distribution fees. They kind of, in the lawsuits, by the way, there was multiple lawsuits out there, and Fortnite, by the way, filed an immediate lawsuit. So it's almost like Fortnite set this up. It looks like to me they set it up because immediately the day after that, a lawsuit going after Apple and Android. And I think we'll hear more about this. But Apple's compared it in the response to the lawsuit. Said, look, if you were distributing this in a bricks and mortar storefront, you'd be paying similar fees. There's some problems with that argument. First of all, not being a monopoly. Right now, Fortnite's got no option. You either got an app on there on these two platforms, or you're not on there. You're on laptops only, or people are playing old versions of your game on the Apple or Android that's been there from before. So it's a little bit different argument. But the real question I'd have is Apple and Android a distributor, a content, or are they a payment processor? And when you look at the app, they do have a lot of work to do. Apple and Android's got a lot of work to do when Fortnite or any app developer puts an app out there, because they got to check it for privacy issues. They got to monitor communications, make sure that they're not taking data out of the platform that they shouldn't have, and so on. So they got to be very careful, and they got to spend a significant amount of work up front to look at that. But once that's done the first time, now, of course, every time they make modifications, they have to do some kind of checks. But once they do that, basically, if you buy another weapon in Fortnite or another individual or whatever you buy, I've never played the games. You can tell probably. They're just a payment processor. So if they're a payment processor, is 30% fair? Well, if I go down to the quick trip down here and fill up with gasoline, that payment processor is only charging Quick Trip about 3%, 2 to 4%, depending on the cards. So much, much lower for payment processing. So I think that's the real argument. What are they, a distributor, a true distributor, or are they a payment processor? I think many of you could make arguments on both sides of that argument. Third article, first indictment in the FBI Trump case. So a former FBI lawyer is expected to plead guilty on a charge of altering a document used to seek the continued surveillance of a former Trump advisor. The guy's name is Kevin Kleinsmith. And when the third FISA warrant came out, all of a sudden, the FBI decided they need to find out whether Mr. Page was a government agent or not. Something must have come up in that time period that and I'm not aware of what that is, that said, wait a minute, we might have got some notes here that says he's working for the CIA. We better clear this out. So, and by the way, that was crucial because if he was, then some of his meetings with Russians might have been work on part of another government agency other than the FBI. So it'd be okay. So they needed to find out. So they went to the CIA. CIA sent an email to Kleinsmith. Kleinsmith was the lawyer at the time, as I think I've said. And they said, Mr. Page was or is an operational contact. And they said, contact us for additional information. Okay. So Kevin Kleinsmith, the lawyer, the FBI lawyer, working for the government, took the email and edited it and added the phrase after was or is an operational contact and put in and not a source. Now, the interviews with Kevin says he believes he added accurate data to the email, but acknowledges that he was wrong in doing it. So he actually believed that the fact that Mr. Page wasn't a source, so therefore it was okay to add it because that was true. It's a fact. Now this is a case of is it a fact or is it the truth? And I've got a long dissertation I can do on that. But in this case, it might have been a fact. We don't know that, but it certainly wasn't the truth because it wasn't what the CIA sent over to him. So, and by the way, this was not part of the fourth FISA warrant. Why not? That's a good question. This thing dropped off completely after that. I think suspicions are internally in the FBI, they knew this was not true and they decided to leave it off completely. Somebody, the judges in that FISA warrant process should have picked this process up and say, wait, why did this drop off? It came suddenly in the third one. It wasn't in the first two, up in the third one. Now it's off in the fourth one. What's changed? Should have asked some tough questions. So, and by the way, this Kevin, he was part of the Clinton team investigation and part of the Mueller team afterwards. So even though he lied to the Mueller, the FISA warrant judge about this, he still was part of both investigation teams. FBI lied and failed to get additional data from the CIA in order to continue spying on a presidential campaign. That's a pretty damning indictment. So, by the way, this is the first indictment of anything involved in the so-called Trump spy case. This is the first one. Many liberals have looked at this and said, there's no criminal indictments. This is not a big deal. Everything's legal so far. This has now proved that wrong and said, no, it was not legal. So tongue-in-cheek, I'd have to ask, why wasn't Kevin Kleinsmith arrested at 5 o'clock in the morning with his family out on the front porch and CNN filming? Tongue-in-cheek, remember, this is what the government did. So, and really, you ought to think about this. How does it make you feel that our government can lie about you and, in this case, get away with it for years? And I think it should cause pause in many of us that this can go on at the highest levels of government. Again, this was a special operation run out of FBI headquarters. Should have never allowed any operation to be run out of FBI headquarters. This should have been done out of field office. In my mind, the men and women in the field office would have never let this happen, and wouldn't have happened. Fourth article. The medium is the message. I always want to say the massage. The medium is the message. And some of you that are a little bit older remember in 1964, Marshall McLuhan was famous for saying that. And basically, he was saying that the radio, the TV, and the print at that time, we didn't obviously have social media, all presented a different message based on the media. And I think in some cases he was right. The Nixon TV debates showed that to be quite right, that Nixon was not prepared for the camera. He looked awful in the camera. Even though his words came out the same as in print and same as an interview on television, that the words being the same, the image came out completely different. So a recent study has looked at that based on communication methods, how does the receiver of your communication perceive you? And how do they perceive the message that you're given to them, given identical messages? So given an identical message through a phone call, through face-to-face, or through a video chat, or through email, for instance, how does it come across? And the results are interesting, but not surprising to me. If you have nothing to hide, the face-to-face, or when you can't do it, a video chat comes across the best. The person perceives you more trustworthy. Why? Because they can see emotion. They can see heartfelt emotion. They see it's coming from you. So that emotion is exposed in a video or in a face-to-face meeting. They've said the best middle ground was a telephone, and the worst was email and text. So, which is, sometimes a lot of how we communicate. So think about the worst highs and lows of your life, and think about the people that reached out to you, and think about which forms of communications just didn't cut it during that time, and think about which worked best. Some of my friends know that, I'm about 7 months ago, I lost a kidney, and a friend of mine just showed up from 1,000 miles away, showed up at my house and stayed with me for a week, talked to me, took me out to eat, took me to dialysis. How do you think that came across? I could see the raw emotion as he knew what was happening to his friend. I could see how he's dealing with me. He's right there face to face. But he could have sent me an email. We're on email. We're on social media. He could have wrote a very nice Facebook posting. But I can tell you, in the highs and lows of my life, people being personally there mean an awful lot. And I know sometimes you can't do that. I don't get me wrong. Sometimes life gets in the way of you being able to do that. But with all the social media and technology advances we've made today, we haven't fixed them so that people can see the raw emotion and see the trustworthiness and judge the trustworthiness of the message. Okay, is the best way to say that. They can't judge the trustworthiness of the message. So remember that. Observation, nothing's changed since 1964. Face-to-face was best in 1964. Pick up the phone or visit. That's what people need. Last, I'm going to add a book section. Wall Street Journal, as many of you probably know, has a book section on Saturday. They always list the best-selling non-fictional, best-selling fictional books. I always find it interesting. I am a prolific book reader, so I like to see what people like. I'm not too much of a follower, but when a lot of people follow a book, like a book for a long period of time, it gets my attention. I thought I'd look at the non-fictional section first, and I'm not going to give you titles, but I thought I'd look at the top 10 bestsellers and say, what subjects are selling? I thought it might be interesting to look at that. And I guess it's not too surprising to me. So 4 of the top 10 were about race. 3 of the top 10 were political. 1 was about women. 1 was about finances. And 1, thanks to Joanna Gaines, was on recipes and cooking. So that's where we stand today. 7 out of the top 10 of the non-fictional books are race and political. And none of them autobiographical or biographical. I thought that was interesting because I like great biographical books, and they typically come up top of the non-fictional listings, and they weren't there. But thank you, Joanna, for taking giving 1/10 of the book section on nonfictional to be a little bit lighter. So fictional, by the way, I wanted to point out, still number 3 on fictional is Where the Crawdads Sing. If you haven't read this book, I had a friend I was talking to the other day from Colorado, and he said it's probably best book he's ever read in his entire life. I know it's certainly the best book I've read in about a year, and I've heard nothing but good things from the people I've recommended that. Highly recommended that book, Where the Crawdads Sing. I've forgotten the author's name right off the top of it, but still number 3, and that book has been up over a year. Maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's been up on selling for a long time period. So that's my Saturday edition of the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for coming aboard. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers. Have a great weekend. What's left of it.